So thank you so much for joining. I'm Prabin Jones, CEO of Micromobility Industries, and welcome to another edition of webinar. I'm specifically excited for this one because, as many of you know, I like data, and the presentations today, it's filled with data, and not just some data. It's filled with bike share data, which I'm so excited about. And we have three speakers today. Um, Tejas from Lyft, Gabriela from BKT, BC Publica, and Laura from MTC San Francisco. What we're going to do is do a deep dive into Lyft's multimodal report. It's very popular. If you haven't read the previous editions, you really have to read through them to understand how the space has evolved. And I believe this is the fourth or fifth report from Lyft, and we're gonna drop a link to it at the end so that you can read through the entire report. But we're gonna we're gonna go through a couple of data from the report, and what Gabriela and Laura would do is give some data from the ground. So I'm super excited for this one. Couple of things. So the format is like before, we're going to have about 40 minutes of 45 minutes of presentation, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. On Zoom, you should see a Q&A button at the bottom or on the side, depending on where you use it. If you have any questions, drop them through the presentation. Don't wait till the end. Drop them. If you have a question on a slide, just like refer to that slide and put your Q&A there. What we'll do is at the end of the presentation, we'll go through the questions and try to answer as much as possible. With that, I'm super happy to kickstart this, and over to Tejas.
Thank you, Prabin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Tejas Shankar. I'm head of policy development and research with Lyft Urban Solutions. I'm based in San Francisco and have been with Lyft for nearly 4 years. And prior to that, I worked in management consulting in a couple US-based transit agencies in their innovation department. I've always been a transit and bike nerd since I grew up in Tokyo, and that's led me to this industry. So it's a pleasure to be here and it's a pleasure to be with you all, and also to be here with the distinguished panelists, Gabby and Laura, who I have the pleasure to work with at Lyft Urban Solutions. Thank you also to Prabin and Micromobility Industries for hosting us today. So I'll jump in. Earlier this month on World Bicycling Day, Lyft published our annual multimodal report. The report can be found on our website, and I'll share that later in the chat, but I'm excited to share with you the top line stats from the report. I'll share an overview of who Lyft Urban Solutions is, in case those of you on the call are not aware, dive into key findings from our bike share programs, and then go deeper, specifically in the rider deep dive section, into US specific findings from our market survey that we shared out. And I'll wrap up to share a few incredible programs that we found inspiring that show the value of the bike share programs and how they serve our communities. So let's dive in. A quick overview of Lyft Urban Solutions. For those that don't know us, we provide bike share hardware and software to 57 cities around the world in 16 countries, including the programs in Mexico City and Guadalajara that Gabby will speak more to, and then also in the San Francisco Bay Area that Laura will speak more to as well. We're centered around a dock-based hybrid and hybrid model, with the station being a core component of creating a reliable and predictable experience. As of now, we have nearly 190,000 bikes and scooters on the ground and over 13,000 stations around the world. Specifically in the US, we operate 6 major bike share programs, including the City Bike program in New York City and the Bay Wheels program here in the San Francisco Bay Area. All of these programs have now incorporated e-bikes into their fleet, and it's really exciting to see. Last year, over 41 million trips taken on e-bikes across the country, with the 63% growth in e-bike rides year over year. It turns out people like to avoid arriving sweaty at their destinations. Prabin mentioned that this community loves data, so I wanted to dive first into our methodology for the report. So for the 6 operated markets I just showed in the US, we sent out a survey in January 2025, working with a survey partner, YouGov, to better understand our riders. This survey, we received about thousands of responses and have incorporated that research to better understand how riders are using the system, what the demographic patterns are of riders, and ways that they're thinking more about reducing their car ownership. In addition, we take those responses and also pair it with our operational data to provide specific results that you're seeing in this report. And on top of that, as you saw that we partner with cities around the world, in the spirit of this partnership, we wanted to highlight case studies and key milestones from this program to give the group a true global perspective of what we're seeing in the shared micromobility industry. So thank you also to a lot of the partners for sharing their case studies. So let's first dive into the global overview of bike share over the past year in 2024. So I wanted to first shout out a few major milestones from this past year and coming this current year. One of the first systems in North America, Capital Bike Share, celebrates 15 years this coming September. The program is owned by the District Department of Transportation and 7 other member jurisdictions in the greater Washington, D.C. area. One fun fact from the program this past year is they had a 143% growth rate in e-bike ridership. And so truly seen the value of e-bikes and how it's catalyzed the growth in the program. Madrid also celebrated 10 years last year and hit actually nearly the 10 million ride mark. They're continually seeing tremendous growth, and we're excited about the growth of that program, and that program is actually also all e-bikes. And other shout outs, San Sebastian in Spain and Dubai for hitting their 5 years in bike share. For launches and expansions from this past year, I won't touch through all of them. You can kind of see the timeline here. But bike share has seen tremendous growth both in ridership and footprint this past year. 3 new programs were implemented in Romanian cities, Dej, Hunedoara, and Moinești. And these were all catalyzed through support of European Union funding. Other cities in the United States and Spain upgraded their hardware and have expanded their footprint overall. I always love this page because it's really incredible just to think about the number of trips that people are taking and how we're truly transforming urban transportation and ridership. 2024 was a year of major ridership records. As you can see here in the top left, City Bike in New York City hit 45 million trips last year, with a 65% year-over-year e-bike growth rate in particular. Other shout-outs, Mexico City had 22 million rides on the EcoBC program. I know Gabby will share a little bit more about that program. And then Montreal's Big C program had 13 million trips. In comparison, for the population-wise, for Montreal, that's likely the largest number of trips per capita on this chart overall. Beyond North America, systems in Europe and the Middle East have also seen tremendous ridership growth and a strong preference for e-bikes. Dubai's hot climate led to a fully e-bike system, which also last year hit 7 million trips. So really excited to see that growth, and particularly a growth across many of these different programs. Speaking of Dubai, I wanted to share a case study for them and then overall an opportunity that a lot of cities are really looking into, which is station electrification. In Dubai, the fleet is fully e-bikes and also has 350 smart charging stations, which has reduced the need for battery swapping. Currently, in many markets, our operations team will go and swap out batteries of e-bikes when they're drained, which can lead to increasing vehicle miles traveled and also having e-bikes unavailable for a certain period of time. With the benefit of having dock-based charging stations, we can directly bring power from the grid to these charging stations and allow for bikes to be directly charged at the station, improving e-bike availability, reducing our operational costs, and then also reducing vehicle miles traveled by the operations team. As you can see here, you can see how the technology works. The power goes directly through the docking station. This is our next generation new pillar docking station and directly feeds into the battery. And then on the bottom, you can see a time lapse of this bike actually increasing charge and increasing the available mileage for riders. Last point about e-bikes, they've been truly a game changer for also growing member usage. Among members in our US bike share programs, the average trip per member have increased to over 150 trips per year in 2024, with a significant increase in the e-bike trip levels. With e-bike trips, while the e-bike trips are displacing some pedal bike trips, what's encouraging to see is that this pedal bike trip is fairly flat compared to this much stronger growth rate in e-bike trips. So it's really encouraging that overall we're seeing e-bikes improve and increase the number of trips that people are taking. And really members are seeing this as a value add to their program. Awesome. So I'll focus, as I mentioned, these are more US specific stats going forward, since we surveyed riders specific to the markets that we operate. And so we'll discuss some of the findings from the survey and from our operational data. First, we looked at demographics of riders. So across these 6 programs, 50% of our riders are members of a community of color, 41% are women, and 23% identify as a part of the LGBT plus community. We've seen these stats fairly consistent for the past few years, and particularly post-COVID, an increase in diversity in the participation of our program. 34 is the average age of riders, and in many of our markets, this number can be a little bit higher or slightly lower, but 22% as our average for the percentage of students that ride, or percentage of riders that are students. When we talk about we ask riders about how they use shared micromobility, and so I wanted to share how those responses are split. We had around 40% of our riders said they've used shared micromobility to get to or from work, 16% to get to or from school, 45% to run errands. In addition, 57 to this last category, the leisure category, we find actually to be a little bit higher, 57% to get to take it to entertainment and recreation, and then 65% for fun. Likely that category is a bit higher, given that a lot of times people get introduced to shared micromobility through riding with friends or getting first started with the group, and that tends to be more in the leisure category. But as we grow the leisure category, the other 2 categories also grow with more repeat ridership on commute and for wellness trips. I also love this chart because it shows kind of 2 factors. One, a return to commute level ridership from pre-pandemic levels to now post-pandemic levels, but also a growing ridership base every single year. So what this chart does is it takes essentially the past 5 years worth of ridership data and essentially aggregate or proportionalizes that ridership based off of every single year and by the hour of that ride. So in 2024, there were significantly more percentage of rides during these times of the day, but also aggregated more rides during these times of the day. So we've seen a pretty significant increase in ridership over the past few years. And in addition, seeing this leveling back to a return to office and return to commute level trends, with a majority of the rides between 7 and 10 a.m. and then also the 4 to 7 p.m. commute. But in some markets, actually, the number can be a little bit different, and that depends primarily based off of the ridership demographics and also the mode usage that we're seeing. And the riders are also increasingly multimodal. We really see bike share as a complement to public transit, and the stats really show it here, with 81% of riders have taken a trip to or from public transit, and 23% do so on a weekly basis. Of those who are of lower income and under $50,000 USD, 39% connect to transit on a weekly basis. So really seeing the value of bike share as a multimodal solution. Of riders surveyed, 51% do not own a vehicle, and then among our bike share members who are more repeat customers and repeat riders, 65% don't own a vehicle. So bikeshare truly is a gateway to reducing car ownership. 47% of those who do own a vehicle use that vehicle less by having access to shared micromobility. And then this last one is kind of a fun one for us to compute. We ask a survey question around likelihood to purchase a vehicle, and then also asking around current ownership trends. And based off of those results, we estimate that nearly 1 million vehicles are not owned due to access to shared micromobility services. So it's really incredible to see the number of cars we're taking off the road as a result of having access to bike share. This is just for the 6 US-based markets, but we aggregate that to across the globe, can imagine that that number is significantly higher. And I always like to end on a feel-good note to share some powerful stories of impact that bikeshare has in empowering the communities. So get to dive into a few case studies. Across these 4 cities, bikeshare programs have partnered with local groups to increase bike awareness with various communities. So a few to shout out: in A Coruña, the team there focused on a bike school to increase street awareness and get riders more comfortable with riding on the street. In Toronto, the team there engaged a program to get older adults to try cycling. So especially with e-bikes, I think that's been a tremendous game changer to encouraging older adults to try cycling. So really awesome to see that program. In the Bay Area, the team has partnered with public libraries to engage particularly income eligible riders and really get them to understand the value of the Bay Wheels program and sign up for a membership. And then Guadalajara, Gabby will speak a little bit more to this program as well, but the bici program offers low-income women and heads of households free transit passes and also bike share memberships to the bici program. So ensuring that transportation is not a barrier to their economic progress. In addition, bike share also improves access for, as I mentioned, the lower income communities and also people with disabilities. A few stats to share here: across our various programs in the US, 21% of rides have started or ended in low income areas, and these are defined by the Housing and Urban Development Authority in the US government. We also have weekly adaptive programming that we run through partners to tailor devices like hand cycles and other adaptive forms of micromobility for people with disabilities. Actually, this picture here, one of the adaptive riders from the New York Adaptive Adventures program actually competed in the New York Marathon this past year. So it's really exciting to see just the engagement with the adaptive community. With the income eligible program, we in the US in particular, we saw a 300% growth in ridership over the past 4 years. So truly incredible growth among this program membership. And then among the income eligible members, they also have a strong preference for e-bikes and are taking significantly more trips. So 170% more e-bike trips compared to our standard members. And so, as I mentioned, we kind of know that standard member or the total member amount, which is 150 trips per year. That number is pulled up a little bit through the equity program ridership. And then last but not least, bike share programs have been a core part of workforce development. In these 3 cities, New York, Barcelona, Guadalajara, each program has found ways to increase operational staff diversity. The New York Bike Path program, the City Bike program, has hired formerly incarcerated individuals and really given them a second chance through to become bike mechanics through the Bike Path program. And we've seen, I think, over 5 or 10 graduates of that program join the City Bike program this past year. In Barcelona, the team there has developed a school to increase women mechanics in the industry. Particularly, the industry has been fairly dominated by men, and so it's really great to see the increase in workforce diversity and adding more women to the workforce, particularly in the mechanic space. And then Guadalajara, I know Gabby will touch upon this more, but I was so amazed to hear about this program when she first told me about it with BKT's partnership with the United Nations to ensure that we can really support our refugee community, and a few of them have joined the workforce as a part of the MeBC program. Great. Well, thank you so much. I'll actually hand it over to Gabby to dive more deeper into all of these, but excited to hear your questions in the chat later.
Thank you, Tejas. You can see my screen, right? Thanks. Well, first of all, congratulations to Lyft for this report, and thank you, Tejas, for inviting us to present some of our milestones and programs that we have in Mexico for the micromobility shared here in Mexico and in Guadalajara. I'm Gabriela Becerra. I'm part of BKT Bici Pública. We are the main operator in Mexico. We currently operate in Mexico City and in Guadalajara, and we are a company with over 17 years of experience. As said, we are in 2 cities and have 2 different systems. Both are public programs that are integrated to the city's public transportation. In total, right now, we provide maintenance and balance to 13,000 bikes, 1,057 stations, and have 217,000 active registrations. Our programs, well, I'm going to talk a little bit more specific about each program. EcoBici is called in Mexico City. We are part of EcoBici since 2021. This is when the system turned 10 years old and a renovation process began. So we've been operating with the consortium 5M2 and BKT ever since. At the moment, the system has 9,000 pedal bikes, 689 stations, and 1.8 million monthly trips in average. There are 190,000 active users, and 37% are women. And in Guadalajara, the program is called MeBC. We've been part of MeBC since the day one. This program started in 2014, and it has 4,000 pedal bikes, over 368 stations, and 4,000 monthly trips on average. Right now, it has 20,000 active users, and 36% are women. Some of our milestones, as mentioned by Tejas, MeBC in Guadalajara has its 10th anniversary, and that made the government started a new master plan to see where the next few years is seeing for the program. So they did a lot of events with academics, activists, and different levels of government, and it finished its 5th expansion stage, which I'm going to talk more about it at the end. And for EcoBici, it hits more than 80,000 trips daily last year, and it also had a huge record of 22 million trips in total. As said by Tejas, those are 10 million more than 2023. Here you can see, well, as said, you love data, so we added this graphic, sorry. So the red one is the old system. This success happened thanks to the renovation. Like, it has been really well received by the citizens in Mexico City, like the new technology. And so we can see when the transition started, a little bit of low trips on the system, but then it just goes on and on. So it's been really good for the city. And here you can see it more closely. There were 2 months where it surpassed 2 million trips. And well, a little bit about our programs as they are in Lyft's report. We in Guadalajara, MeBC has a program from the government, the state government, that supports and connects women. It's called Mi Pasaje, and it gives 2 free transit passes to low-income women heads of household that lives in the suburbs area. And they have also the option to accept a free bikeshare membership. So it's been a really nice way to have a completely new audience that other way wouldn't try the bikeshare, right? We actually did a research on 2021 to see how were these women using them. And it was really interesting because a lot of them accepted like during COVID or at the end of COVID, and also to go to save money and to travel to job interviews. So it was a really nice way to, as I said, to introduce women to this bikeshare that right now it has 1,560 MiBici membership from the 17,000 women that are registered to Mi Pasaje. These are the ones that have MiBici, and in total, they have made over 37,000 trips from its beginning in MiBici. The green dots are the stations here in Guadalajara, Zapopan, and Tlaquepaque. It's actually in 3 municipalities, the system, and the blue dots are the places where the women live. So they do use it as a commute service, right? They complement their public transportation with the bike system. This is the travel pattern for specifically the women with Mi Pasaje program. And it's really interesting because the average female user for MiBici just stays on the center polygon in the center, or do they travel on the other polygons, but they don't connect it. And in exchange, these women do use more diverse and dynamic use of the system. And it also goes in hand with a bicycle program called Todas en MiBici, made from women to women. And it happens on weekends, so probably they don't have to work and are able to acquire or reinforce their theoretical and practical skills on bicycles without neglecting their childcare support. It also has activities for their kids. So it's really interesting to see they completely engaging with the bike and their kids like being taken care. There were 52 events in 22 communities during 2024. 378 women assisted and 223 children. We do have programs with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, as well as BKT and the government. One of them is like the Alliance for Jobs. We attend to their job fairs, and I believe our job opportunities are published on their website for refugees to apply. And right now we have integrated refugees into MiBici work, customer service specifically, and bike rebalancing. And also the government implemented a program called Espacios Seguros, which is like safer spaces. It's a pilot program on 20 stations. It didn't happen last year, but it's still running. So they analyzed like the probably more dangerous stations and installed lightning and a emergency button to prevent or to help people in situations, specifically women and refugees. And also last year, we BKT worked with a collective called Transeuntas to create a gender-responsive guide for site planning stations. And it was a whole year of work that we presented at last year's NAPSA. And it was really interesting because we did a whole walking tour with female users in different stations. And that way we analyzed what made them feel more safe, right? On our different stations. So we created a theoretical and practical tool for prioritizing more inclusive and habitable environments when designing and implementing bikeshare system. Here's the QR code if you want to download it, but I'll share the link in the chat too. And I think the most interesting part of this is that we could apply this methodology in the evaluation to install 8 new bici stations last year. This was thanks to the government. They let us analyze 40 different proposals for locations for these new 8 stations, and we selected the best according to the booklet that comes in the gender guide. So yeah, it was really fun and interesting. And thank you so much. This is all.
Great. Thanks, Gabby. That was really impressive to hear all the great work that you're doing in Mexico. And I know we aspire to do as well on a lot of those fronts, ridership as well. So let's see. Great. Well, my name is Laura Kroll. I'm a principal planner at MTC. We're the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is San Francisco Bay Area's planning and financing agency. Thanks again to Tejas and Prabin for putting together the webinar. I'm excited to share some insights that we have from the Bay Wheels program. So at MTC, I manage the Bay Wheels bikeshare program in partnership with Lyft and our other local jurisdictions. So first, it's really important to understand what MTC is and what we're not. We are a planning, financing, and coordinating agency for the San Francisco Bay Area. So that's as far north as Wine Country and Napa and Sonoma counties, and as far south as Silicon Valley and Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. This includes about 100 total cities, with both the 12th and 17th largest cities in the US and San Jose and San Francisco, respectively. So we're not a city, we're not a transit agency, we don't own assets, but what we do is plan, finance, and coordinate at a level between the state and county. So this means that we usually manage projects that span multiple counties, hence us managing the Bay Wheels Regional Bikeshare Program. The program includes 5 cities across 3 counties, and soon to be 6 cities and 4 counties. So as mentioned, the system operates in 5 cities: Berkeley, Emeryville, Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose. The system is geographically broken up into 3 subregions, which you can see here on the map: San Francisco, the East Bay, and San Jose. And San Francisco is really sort of the hub of the system. And to contextualize for folks that aren't as familiar with California and San Francisco, San Francisco is really the major job generator. So a lot of people will live in the East Bay and commute over to San Francisco for work. So as such, San Francisco makes up only about 60% of the total bikes, but about 88% of total trips this past year. E-bikes were introduced into the system in all 5 cities starting in October of 2023. My agency, MTC, made a $16 million investment into the system, which was the first public investment into the system since launch, which was in 2017. So prior to that, our system was a $0 10-year contract, which was written in 2015. So the risk was really, sort of squarely on the operator. And the contract was also written in a time when exclusive rights for bikeshare, definitely held more weight than they may have today. So the $16 million investment was really a way to better align our policy goals with Lyft's. As with many agencies, we've been tracking ridership since pre-pandemic, which we'll see a little bit more of shortly, but we've also been tracking and comparing ridership since the MTC investment. And similar to a lot of Tejas's takeaways, we've really seen how e-bikes have had a dramatic impact on ridership. So in 2024, overall ridership increased 32% compared to 2023. And then if we use May 2025 data, we've seen a 76% increase in ridership compared to May 2023. So we haven't seen any kind of a plateau in ridership yet, which is really exciting. And, diving a little bit more into ridership, as was mentioned, a group of people that really likes data. This graph is showing monthly ridership from launch until last month. So in purple, we see our classic or pedal bikes, and then in blue-gray, we see the e-bike trips. So two kind of key contextualizing notes here. From December to early March, e-bikes were just in San Francisco and San Jose, and they didn't have premium pricing. So they were the same price as pedal bikes. So that means for members, they get 45 free minutes of ride time on a pedal bike. So they also got 45 free minutes of ride time on e-bikes. Not surprising to many, ridership really skyrocketed here. And unfortunately, for a lot of the data folks, prices were added the same month that the pandemic lockdown started. So we can't really analyze the direct impact of pricing on ridership, which I know we would have loved to do. Second note here, in looking at system-wide ridership, San Francisco currently makes up 88% of ridership, and previously it was even higher than that at about 92, 93%. So any of these kind of system-wide trends are really San Francisco trends. Hence why we usually like to kind of break up the system into the 3 subregions. I guess in looking over time, as happened in many other markets, ridership really dropped significantly during 2020 and COVID. And we had a small recovery of maybe 4% in 2021, and then a much bigger increase in 2022 at about 28% compared to the year prior. 2023, a little bit of a plateau, and then, we added the some additional new e-bikes in October, November 2023. So after that, we saw a 32% ridership increase in 2024, and then also we've seen a 32% increase in 2025, comparing that same date range in 2024. So definitely safe to say our ridership has recovered beyond pre-pandemic levels, and really exciting to see that May 2025 ridership has already surpassed our highest month of ridership last year. And the other dynamic, I know we focused a lot on e-bikes. The other dynamic here is obviously looking at the pedal bikes, which suddenly are a lot smaller portion of our trip percentage. So we saw a decrease in pedal bike trips in 2023 and 2024. But so far in 2025, we've actually seen an increase in pedal bike ridership at about 27% compared to the same period in 2024. So that's definitely something that we're very interested in seeing how that continues, because it's sort of implying that, the increase in overall ridership isn't at the expense of a decrease in pedal bike ridership, but that the pie itself is actually growing. So definitely curious to see how this might continue as we enter our peak season. For reference, usually our highest month is October. You can also just see some of our, general trip numbers here. Again, we sort of pale in comparison to a lot of Gabby's stats in Guadalajara and Mexico City, but we're still doing the best we can. And really to kind of continue to tell this story about the e-bike boom, we also have to look at utilization, both by city and by bike type. So for this, we do break it up again into the 3 subregions, San Francisco, the East Bay, and San Jose. Not surprising, San Francisco is the hub of the system. It also has the highest utilization for both pedal and e-bikes. So 1.5 trips per bike per day for pedal bikes, and 5.3 trips per bike per day on the new e-bikes. The East Bay and San Jose have much slower utilization, with neither breaking the 1 trip per bike per day level. However, one kind of consistent trend we do see is that e-bike utilization is roughly 3 times pedal bike utilization in all 3 subregions. So sort of seeing a consistent maybe preference there. Also, e-bikes are really overperforming, making up 78% of ridership while only being about 52% of the fleet system-wide. And then the final piece, sort of getting back to the pedal bikes, utilization really introduces the question of the viability of pedal bikes outside of San Francisco, which we can dive more into later during the conversation and discussion. I know we talked a lot about quantitative parts of our system today, but we also have some really exciting programmatic updates coming over the next year. We're doing our first system expansion ever, expanding to Daly City, which is the next city south of San Francisco. And this expansion has been a huge collaboration with 2 countywide agencies, as well as Daly City. So we're really excited to see how we can use this model and apply it elsewhere in the region. Also, as part of MTC's investment into the system and, kind of harkening back to some of Tejas's slides on electrification, we also provided funding for electrifying stations in our system. So we're excited to launch our first electrified station next month, which has been another really great partnership, this time with the Presidio Land Trust, which is a federal agency that are, stewards of some federal land in San Francisco. So we really hope to use this first station as a starting point to working with our larger statewide utility provider later in the fall. And then finally, one piece that's especially important to MTC is connections to transit. And I know Tejas also, highlighted some elements of this as well. Transit in the Bay Area, as well as many parts of the US, has been on a fiscal cliff since the pandemic. And my agency has been a key convener and leader in sort of trying to steer that ship off of the cliff. So as such, we're, trying to find new ways to improve bike shares connections to transit, including, identifying new funding to add more bike share stations near transit hubs, as well as exploring some new transit discount opportunities that hopefully can be coming out next year as we roll out an updated transit card. Yeah, so, we're really excited to see how bike share can continue to grow and adapt in the Bay Area, and see how e-bikes will continue to kind of change and shape the system going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Tejas. Thank you, Gabriela. That was a data-packed presentation, and good to see ridership going up. We have a bunch of questions. So, Tejas, do you want to take some of them?
Sure, I can start with a couple and then maybe hand it over to Gabby. I see here one question from Mark around, does the cost benefit of dock charging still apply if it includes the capex of installing the dock and power supply? So that, I'd say it depends primarily, since the cost for capex can vary significantly based off of the city and the country. In the United States, the cost of trenching is significantly more expensive than what we've heard in other countries. And so from that perspective, the tail of that is still beneficial, but it takes a longer period of time to get that ROI benefit. But what we have seen in places where that capex is a little bit lower is that ROI comes much sooner. So it really depends on the dynamics of permitting and working directly with the authorities, the utilities, to ensure that we can get connected to the grid. And then one more from, I think it's Jan, about owning vehicles. Do we have any information about people owning or wanting to purchase a vehicle? This was something that we asked in our survey, and so this is biased a little bit more towards the United States. But we had, from our survey, 44%, I'm just looking at our stats here, 44% of riders said that they own a pedal bike, and 11% say that they've owned an e-bike. So overall, I'd say around 50% of our riders generally have own a bicycle, but they also complement that personal ownership with the bike share system. We don't necessarily know about intent to purchase, unfortunately. Great, and then I see one more here around like to hear more about ride growth on regular bikes, and that might be a good segue for Gabby, since the systems, the EcoBC system and some of the systems in Mexico are all pedal bike systems, and I've seen tremendous growth in ridership. But overall, we have seen a fairly consistent growth also in pedal bike rides, but just a much higher growth and preference for e-bikes. But maybe Gabby, if you want to take kind of the rest of that, and then also another question, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Tejas. Well, I think what helps here in Mexico is both cities are kind of plain. So the pedal bikes are really successful. And we do have a lot of infrastructure in both cities, like bike lanes and other kind of infrastructure. So that has been a really positive for both systems. But there's probably going to be some e-bikes on bici, like expansion out of on a suburb area, like some sort of a whole different system, but with the same name. So we'll probably start having e-bikes soon. And well, about what aspect of like a VC system transformation would you say most accounts for the soaring ridership? I would say COVID really helped. People don't want to be in crowded spaces. So that was one. Probably, I mean, and of course the new technology from Lyft. And the system had a huge expansion also. Not only it was renovated, but it has an expansion and it got to new, very solicited areas from the city. And the price is not completely subsidized, but it's really affordable. So that really helped for VC growth. Adriana asks some of the criteria to the stations. There are 8 elements that are based on a study from Collective CIS, that it's a collective from Barcelona. And you have to contemplate some signs like visibility, vitality, informal surveillance, the connectivity that the area has with other transportation modes, if it's road safety. So there are some sort of different elements, and it's really interesting. And well, there's another one that says, why do you think the programs Mi Pasaje and Todas en Mi Bici have been much easier to implement in Guadalajara? I think it's the people in the government have more interest and acknowledge to gender perspective programs. That has really helped. I don't know, Laura.
Yeah, I can pick a couple bagels ones. It looks like Mark had a question if there's any data on the level of bike and e-bike use in hillier areas in San Francisco. We don't have that data yet. I know we're working on getting some MDS data as part of a contract with Blue Systems. So we'd actually be able to sort of see that breadcrumb data of where trips are actually happening rather than just start and end station. But anecdotally, yes. For anyone who hasn't been to San Francisco, the topography is extremely hilly, and the e-bikes really do make a big difference there, just in terms of being able to get to various parts of the city. And similarly in the East Bay, just being able to go further distances, because I know we do see a lot of trips, say, starting in Oakland and ending in Berkeley, which is, depending on how fast you're going, 30 to 45 minutes, depending on where you're going. So I think there also is that distance element as well. So yeah, we're definitely excited to see what data and information we can kind of glean from the MDS data. So hopefully we can do another webinar on that in the coming year. I know there's another question on from William on how much of the ridership is accounted for by cross-region trips. One piece to note, you can't actually bike from the East Bay to San Francisco. Not yet. There is a sort of half of a span on a bridge with a bike lane, and the other half doesn't have anything. So I'm just wanting to note that we wouldn't actually be able to see any trips happening from the East Bay to San Francisco. But we are, and I don't have any of the numbers offhand myself, but trying to understand more in the East Bay, where there are 3 cities, how many of those trips are happening between cities. And I think another piece of analysis that I don't think we can't do anymore, maybe Lyft could do, is, the zip code of the member compared to sort of where their trips are happening. I know that data used to be publicly available, but no longer is. So that's the sort of other way that kind of inferring some element of that. And then Adriana had a question on scooter utilization. So just a sort of reminder of where we are in this, as given that we are in a city, at least in the Bay Area, scooters are managed at the city level. So we don't manage any of the scooter share programs ourselves. It's usually our partners at the local jurisdictions themselves. So I did just Google some quick data just as a reference point. I know it's not that up to date, but there was a report from SFMTA in 2022. Well, the report is in 2023 for the 2022 scooter data, and the utilization in San Francisco was 1.7 trips per scooter per day, just as kind of a reference point. Again, that data is a little bit old, but just as a starting point there. And then maybe I can also start taking Doug's question, and maybe Tejas, there's a little bit you can add there as well. So we coordinate directly with SFMTA as the local jurisdiction partner on the program, the same way that we work with OCDOT, Oakland's Department of Transportation, City of Amarillo, City of Berkeley, and San Jose Department of Transportation. So we talk to them weekly about sort of all things related to bike share. As mentioned, a lot of those staff also manage scooter share programs, and it really varies city to city or DOT/transit agency, how much they coordinate elsewhere at their agency on whether it's Vision Zero efforts or other sort of infrastructure programs and projects. I know MTC as a regional agency has a Vision Zero coordinating group and some other efforts there to try and, sort of holistically be thinking about how to improve biking safety. And Tejas, I don't know if there's any other elements that Lyft has been supporting as well.
Yeah, so and another add to that is also working with a lot of local advocacy groups. So the San Francisco Bike Coalition or Silicon Valley Bike Coalition or East Bay Bike Coalition all are really valuable in supporting a lot of the safety efforts and really advocating for better bike infrastructure. At the end of the day, the best way to improve safety is to have better bike infrastructure. Of course, we do also focus on rider safety, and we'll have like in-app notifications to allow riders to know how to improve their journey and how to engage with e-bikes in a more safe manner. But primarily to improve bike safety, we find that the infrastructure piece is the most critical. So working with advocacy organizations to then kind of support a lot of that messaging at the city level is kind of one way that we look at this as well, is just to ensure that we're thinking about like safety in numbers and trying to grow ridership and also trying to grow better bike infrastructure.
Great. I think we are almost at the end of the session. For the audience, if you have one last question, you can drop it. Right. I have one question for Laura. I think it was mentioned in one of the questions as well. So if in one of the charts you had the seasonal, it was a chart for ridership, and specifically if you look at the e-bike part of the chart, there was a massive drop every year around a certain season, right? The drop is much higher compared to pedal bikes. Do you know why that is?
I mean, and let me just share my screen for folks that maybe forgot. Okay. I mean, the temporal seasonality, right, is pretty standard for bike usage across the board. There's a lot of research that has looked into this. Weather is a big piece of that, as well as darkness and sort of the time of daylight. So a ton of research supporting that. And I think I guess I could probably do the percentages, but I'm not that good at quick math. But this seems pretty standard to us in our system. Again, I think it looks more dramatic because for us, October is our highest ridership month. And then obviously, November, December, January are sort of the next three lowest versus if we had a sort of more gradual downshift. So even though it might look dramatic, I think it's actually pretty standard in terms of the kind of temporal pattern. We just have a little bit later peak season than I think other cities. Because we also are a mild weathered place.
Got it. So yeah, I think we are at the end of the session. But thank you so much, Tejas, Laura, and Gabriela for coming on the webinar and sharing your data. Tejas, for folks who would who would like to read the entire report, where can they find the report?
Yeah, let me put that in the chat right now. I just shared the link, so you can download the report from our website. And yeah, would love to hear any of the questions you have. Please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I had a chance to go through the report, and it's a must-read report if you're in micromobility. And this year we've been focusing on hope as a theme for the entire year. And every chart that you look at, it is all trending in a positive direction. So everybody in bikeshare or generally in micromobility, you should definitely read the report page to page, cover to cover, in fact. Right. But anyway, thank you so much for everyone for joining, and thank you so much, the speakers. And we'll see you in the next edition. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.